Hello, everyone. This is Lala, and today I'm going to be covering the real world New Orleans. So, we have officially left the 90s and now we are in the 2000s regarding reality TV and the real world. So, I am definitely interested to seeing how things go here. I also know that this is the final season to have a homecoming, and the homecoming for these seasons arguably the reason why homecoming ended. So there is some additional context that I can get into, or at least research there. We're in season 9, so I'm definitely interested so far. Looking at the cast, all of them have been on the challenge, so I am familiar with all of them in one way or another, but obviously the extent of it is something else. From what I can see here, four of them have been on one season, and only two of them have been somewhat tenured. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all of these people interact with one another. And I heard this is apparently a favorite Real World season, or at least regarding MTV. We'll see how I feel about that. But yeah, let's just get to it. Okay, so I finally watched the Real World New Orleans, and apparently this is one of production or MTV's favorite seasons, and it's one of the fan favorite seasons, and I'm kind of confused as to why. I'm not gonna say that the season's a bad season because it's not a bad season at all. But I was expecting something more epic, more entertaining, more action packed, and it really kind of just wasn't. Since all of them were on the challenge, I was familiar with them in some way. I thought I would learn more about all of them, but I really didn't. Some people really didn't get much characterization or screen time, and you can definitely tell that a lot of the personalities weren't the strongest. So it calls for a lack of dynamicism, but it is an easy watch. It's not a season that's really too toxic or anything like that. Honestly, I just think it's kind of like a middle of the road, slightly pleasant season. If I were to rank it amongst the, did I watch nine? But yeah, I think I watched nine. Let me count. I think I watched nine seasons. Let me see. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Yeah, out of the nine seasons that I have watched thus far, I would rank it sixth. So yeah, and this is also the third and final season that got a real world homecoming, which I guess a lot of the seasons beforehand had issues when it came to casting, and I heard Julie was a complete disaster there. But let's get to it. Okay, so on to the actual season. Julie is a Mormon University student, and they don't know that she's going on the show. I know the backlash of this because it was on her first challenge season, and she meets David on a New Orleans train. Melissa meets Danny at some front lobby, and he is teasing her with some sort of secret. Julie and David go to their home first, with Matt and Kelly being the ones to arrive afterwards. Matt and Julie are getting along really well. Melissa and Danny arrive to the house, and then Jamie's the final one to arrive to the house, and they all go to the club for the first night. Julie tells her parents that her roommate is a guy, i.e., Matt, and they lose their minds due to how strictly Mormon they are. Julie feels bad about having preconceived thoughts about David, and it's clear that he is getting some sort of crush on her, or at least that's how they make it look. Kelly and Jamie are also getting along, and he talks about not liking relationships, which is a thing with him throughout the season. And Danny has a crush on both Kelly and Jamie, though. Yeah, this is very weird. Anyways, Danny has a boyfriend that he misses, and the boyfriend comes over. And it's so annoying because the boyfriend's face is always bleeped out every time he appears, and he appears a lot throughout the season. Anyways, uh, David is seen as a player and brings home a woman to have sex with, essentially. Julie finds the need to confront him about it, where he is lectured by Julie and Matt about the sin of premarital sex. David and Melissa are getting along due to being the only quote unquote brown people in the house, and we see Julie and Jamie getting to know one another. Melissa is not into dating black guys because she doesn't want to feel like she has to quote unquote prove her blackness as she is Malaysian. But people need to understand her black side and her father who's black. And it's a huge part of who she is. We learn a lot about how her parents were not there a lot and she's very attention seeking. She comes off as pretty annoying during these earlier episodes. Julie sees a picture of Danny and a guy kissing, and she knows that he is gay and feels weirded out by it, but not in the way that people would expect. Melissa is really in over her head about being in the house, and she is drinking while they're going out. David is not feeling her attitude and then goes on. Sorry, Melissa goes on the stripper stage at a club, I believe. Whatever. David confronts her about drinking too much, and he wants her to speak to him about it first, and she's not for that and prefers to drink. So they're not getting along at this point. They decide to have another round of fighting where he is giving her a cold shoulder, and then she apologizes. Melissa meets a man named Fat Matt, and they are kind of dating. The group gets their task of the season, which is working for a TV station. We see them coming up with a tagline for the show, and there's a lot more focus on Melissa's relationship that I don't really give a crap about at this point. But she is judging the guy a lot. Anyways, the Matt guy goes somewhere else, and she's salty about it, and Jamie calls her out for judging people off stupid crap despite her not wanting people to judge her. And the guys pretty much tell her, or the guy that she's seeing, that he won't be seeing much of her anymore. Okay, so Jamie is attracted to Kelly, but he is adverse to marriage and long term relationships. And Melissa is also attracted to him, and Kelly also has a crush on Jamie. And it's interesting because Kelly and Jamie don't really get along by the season's end. Kelly and Melissa agree to not fight over their crush on Jamie, but they end up meeting a guy at a bar who looks just like Jamie, and Kelly is interested in this guy, and I think this is the one she's seeing for the rest of the season. Kelly is planning a drag show, and of course Max is not into it whatsoever due to his beliefs. The guy Kelly is seeing has a girlfriend, so that's supposedly the end of that. There's apparently some sort of attraction between Melissa and David, or there was, but she's talking to a guy named Ryan who she was dating for a month before she left for the season. So they have a few days until their first show, and David is not interested in anything other than playing his piano. Kelly does confront him about his lack of effort with the cast and isolating himself, where he thinks that they are ignorant because they act like he is since doing anything, since they're just not seeing it. They have a meeting at the TV station about their idea. David shuts it down despite him not being a part of the meetings often. Melissa almost throws a chair at him before leaving. Wow. Melissa's guy shows up and she's drinking where they go to a drag club for her birthday, and her boyfriend is clearly uncomfortable with her antics. David is stripping, taking off his clothes, grinding on Kelly and Melissa. So they're all having fun, and then Melissa is very subtle. I hope you catch my sarcasm about wanting to have sex with Jamie, and then she wants a threesome with him and David. Melissa seemingly breaks up with the guy, but it's all just awkward as hell. So Danny works at a bartender at a he works as a bartender at a gay club, and he is debating about hooking up with someone while at the house. Kelly is still dating the guy from a few episodes ago, though he essentially mentions to her that he has a girlfriend. It's Valentine's Day, and Julie brings her brother to New Orleans, who's in a band. Kelly meets with the guy who also has a girlfriend who is in town. Danny's boyfriend visits again, and they end up having a date in the house. So they have to do their first show about certain issues going on in New Orleans. There are a bunch of issues when it comes to the production of the TV show. Matt has to build a new set, and Kelly is confused as to why David is singing in it instead of just answering the questions like they all did and should do. But of course, it turns into an argument between the two of them. Anyways, they continue preparing for their first show, and they pull it off, so good for them. Melissa tells Jamie how much he likes him, and a bunch of his friends arrive to the house. Julie asks Melissa why do black people say the N word, and the fact that she just said it was kind of just very weird, where non black people can't say it. And she also asks David too. Honestly, this conversation is really dumb, mainly because I don't even know why black people have an obsession with this word and why they use it, but that's just me. Anyways, Melissa tells Julie not to use the word colored either. Melissa mentions that the tour guide for the crocodile said the N word, and Jamie mentions that Melissa is being biased, where she thinks it's weird that she is the one who's being biased, and the situation is really bothering Melissa. And I'm looking at Jamie with the side eye. He gives a half-assed apology, but he claims that he just doesn't understand, and he's pretty much has the mentality of she shouldn't let the word affect her so much. Okay, so David meets a woman who helps him with an opportunity to sing the national anthem. Anyways, the group is doing a show about interracial relationships, and obviously Melissa is a product of that. But there's a wall between David and the other roommates. David has to go to his meeting for a band he needs the book, but the other roommates are using the car and they knew he needed it. But Matt ends up helping him out with it. David confronts the house about it, but he is not getting the apology from the roommates that he thinks he should get. The other roommates mention that David has communication issues and he tells Matt about having a distant relationship with his dad and is a huge mama's boy. So there's some more of the backstory about David that we're going to learn more and more about throughout the season. David's mom flies down to see him sing the national anthem and everyone watches him. Melissa is kind of all over the place. She is a daddy's girl, but apparently he has an alcohol problem that her siblings are scared of, and they fear him due to it. Kelly is asking Matt about his time and his romantic life, where he does not have a lot. Melissa is insecure because she is not the white standard of beauty while she's processing a lot of her childhood. And I do think a lot of the comments that Melissa makes throughout the season is due to her not having the most self-esteem due to her race. Just flat out. Matt does bring home a girl, and they all think she's a huge ass weirdo. Julie is very offended because Melissa supposedly doesn't believe in God, so she feels attacked. Oh my gosh, this is repulsive. Anyways, and Melissa ends up snapping because she wants to bring up God. Kelly rightfully sees her ass away from this conversation, but the two of them do eventually hash it out. She comes out of the episode wanting to seek psychiatric help. So it is time for Mardi Gras, and Julie is confused about Mardi Gras, but she really is excited about it as the parade is happening outside of the house. Some author invites the seven of them to dinner at her house, obviously for TV exposure. Danny and his friends go to a club. Then we move on to David hooking up with someone and his roommates eavesdropping. While having another friend who was downstairs, he doesn't even know the woman's name he slept with. The cast gets their own float, are in costumes, and parade down the driveway. As they are officially in Mardi Gras, throwing beads and all that, where David is watching from the house, from within the house. Danny is drunk, kisses a bunch of people, and brings a guy in the confession room to hook up with. So he essentially cheated on his boyfriend and feels crap about it. But he does tell his boyfriend through the phone, who forgives him. Oh, how nice, I guess. Cast are going to South Africa for their field trip of the season. David is getting frustrated because he wants to tow the car with a flat tire that he caused, though they could just change the wheel, and people are quite frankly getting tired of his attitude. Once they arrive, they learn about the apartheid, and it obviously hits David and Melissa differently. They represent different things in South Africa as she's mixed, so she would be colored, and obviously he would be black. Melissa is clearly not interested in a lot of this, but they go do mountain climbing, see some wildlife animals in their natural habitat. Anyways, the roommates are borderline offended that David is more open with the civilians than the roommates, but they want to confront him about this. They are still in South Africa, and David is asked by some of his roommates about why he's not putting any effort with his roommates, where he mentions that he makes his life difficult in a bittersweet way, which is kind of confusing regarding the topic at hand. Matt decides to speak to David and acknowledges that David has a different experience than him due to race and whatever, but he does want to understand and get close to him. Melissa tells Jamie that David is a poor excuse of a black man. Okay, who the hell is she out of all people to mention that, and that the two minorities should stick together? Like I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of this is her deflecting issues she has about her race, and she feels like getting in with white people is her way to overcompensate for that. And she mentioned earlier that she felt like she had to prove her blackness, so maybe that's why she's kind of like the way she is with David. But either way, she's out of line. Some of the cast decide to bungee jump. David speaks to Kelly about joining Islam because he wanted to be the complete opposite of his father, who essentially abandoned he and his mother, and David is slowly starting to open up. Of course, they go back home by the end of the episode, but he and Melissa supposedly make amends. Jamie is producing a show about the influence of African music, and Danny's parents are coming over, and he's having them meet his boyfriend. But he has a distant relationship with his father ever since coming out. The parents and the boyfriend do meet awkwardly. Matt thinks acting on acts sexually since she can't produce a child is wrong, but having those feelings isn't wrong, which I guess is an interesting way of looking at things. Anyways, the show Jamie produced did not turn out well with the camera work, the shots, and making it look good and all that jazz. Julie wants to get a man and is eyeing a waiter at a restaurant. David and Kelly are talking about the roommate, and Jamie can tell that neither one of them like him, but he doesn't really understand why. Julie meets with the guy at his house, and Jamie decides to confront Kelly about being jealous of him. And she thinks that it's ludicrous that he thinks that, where she thinks that he has a lot of issues, quite frankly. The two of them have another conversation, but it does end a lot better this time around. Julie decides to go boxing at a party and is pretty much letting it loose. Julie's family is coming down to New Orleans, where it is also Julie's time to produce an episode for the TV show. With Julie's family coming down, you definitely see some of the tension, especially with her father, who does not approve of her tattoo and other stuff. The roommates also speak to Julie's brothers, who are very indoctrinated in the path that their parents gave them, and then her brother's band also plays in the show. Tensions between Julie and her father gets worse, and Kelly is contemplating staying in New Orleans after taping, mainly due to her relationship with this Peter guy. Julie and her father start arguing, and then he is not impressed about her using profanity in a conversation, mentioning that it isn't a good example to her siblings. All this leads to her having a full-blown panic attack since she knew that it would end up like this, and her brother is comforting her. We then move on to Kelly and Peter arguing in a vehicle, and then we see Julie's family leave. Jamie's friends are in town and they went to some strip club where he is tired of being the partying guy. The first time we heard about this all season, which he vents about to Matt. Melissa is running and is flirting with Jamie yet again, and he tells her that she needs a man, and she ends up going on a date with some guy, but he tells her that he's seeing someone else, so that ends. We then see Julie and Jamie flirting with one another about sexual stuff, but she's aware that Melissa likes him, so they are just friends. Melissa's friend is a painter and they are hanging out. Somehow this leads to the cast of mud wrestling one another in some pit that they made, and then Jamie and Julie are kissing back home. Anyways, the painting has calmed Melissa down and people are starting to find her a bit more tolerable now. It is David's time to produce a show, and he's not listening much to the others, and their boss notices that his behavior is rubbing people the wrong way, especially Julie, where David needs to work with them. Matt sees a woman he likes and tries to get with her, but it doesn't go the way he wanted to. Apparently, Julie gave the woman's number and played some sort of prank on him, which made him feel even crappier. David only books female models, but Julie wanted male models too to mix it up, and apparently there's no budget for their clothes, and David only wants scantily dressed women models. David asks at the last minute for the roommates to help, despite doing most of it already without their input because he didn't want their input, and they're all confused about his concept. The strippers David book can't make it. Callie and Matt save the entire thing last minute where they turn it into a swimsuit model commentary one-way show where David's arrogance is called out by the house. Julie is speaking to the others about her fight with David that happened at the end of last episode and how over it she is, but Matt doesn't like that David is singled out. Julie meets a man at her brother's concert, and there's tension between she and Matt as he is being rude to her guest. David invites a bunch of strippers to their house to hang out in the hot tub, where damn near the entire class leaves this party. Julie and Matt clearly have a lot of tension between them and communicate like elementary schoolers, so she writes a letter to him. Matt got the letter and does want to fix the issue. Danny confronts David because everyone else in their house is cleaning at the same time, but he refuses to help out. Matt was going to go to the studio with David to support him, but David ditches him. Matt asks him about it when he comes back, and David doesn't care whatsoever. Melissa mentions that David is the angry black man. I don't like how she continuously does this, and you can clearly tell by this pathology that she sees herself different from black people, which is fine, but the constant jabs about him regarding this really rubs me the wrong way. And the house is ready to confront him now. So Jamie leads this house meeting, which is about confronting about why David is an asshole to everyone in the house. The others are talking about their feelings, and for a while David is just writing stuff down, and Melissa's over it, since she had a better time about this once she stopped giving a fuck about him. Pretty much her words. David mentions that he is just always on the go, and Danny mentions that he's on survival mode. And then turns to David talking about his mom as he's crying, as his mom's not in the best of health, and he's trying to move to do whatever he can to provide for her and sees this as an opportunity where he can do that. Pretty much they all make up with him and understand him, but Melissa has no interest because he didn't say sorry. Matt and Julie continue to talk about their issues, and everyone is just wanting to enjoy the rest of their time together, as they only have like 2 weeks left. Kelly's boyfriend leaves, and Melissa mentions that she has barely spent time with the others this season, and it's a bit too late for Kelly to try to form friendships due to Kelly not caring for most of the season. It's time for the final show, and everyone is putting their best foot forward, where Kelly is really organizing it. David invites Julie to the studio to rap, and everyone is coming full circle with everything's coming full circle for everyone. So it is the final episode. Julie is writing a song for Danny about love, and it is time for her to educate her Mormon school. Sorry, it's time for her to go register for another year at her Mormon school, where she didn't tell anyone about her filming the show at her school because she initially didn't plan on going back. Obviously, doing the show breaks so many rules for the school, like cohabitating with men, drinking, and more stuff. And I know how this ends by Extreme Challenge, which filmed later this year, where they didn't allow her to come back. And Julie realizes that her community is very judgmental. Melissa submitted paintings for her art show openings and is shocked that David is in attendance supporting her. Julie calls her she calls her father to apologize, and everyone is moving out to go back home, so they all say their goodbyes. Okay, brief cast thoughts. Jamie was still boring like he was in all the other challenge seasons. He seemed like a cool guy, but we just didn't know a whole lot about him. There's a brief mention of him being a party guy, but they didn't delve much into him overall, which was definitely disappointing. It's crazy how Matt was less judgmental here than he was on his one challenge season, but I did like that he was a bit more open minded with certain things, despite still being that type of Christian still. Melissa is definitely very entertaining, but there are many moments of this season where she annoyed the heck out of me and I didn't like some of her commentary, but she was easily the biggest personality of the season. Danny seemed like a fine guy. He wasn't the most telegenic at all. His friendship with Kelly was nice enough. I see why they're partnered together on Battle of the Seasons. Yeah, Kelly was kind of dry in some ways. I heard about what she was going through the last year or two, so I do feel bad for her about that. But she was kind of surly. I get why she and Danny were paired together on Battle of the Seasons, but there's not much else to say. You can definitely tell that the real world wanted someone like Julie, so they could show someone being more conservative and then in the beginning and then becoming less conservative by the end. Though when you look through the cracks, you could definitely see how attention starved Julie is, and it would lead to what she would do throughout her challenge career and homecoming. David is confusing. While I do think he did the show so he could promote his music career, and he was isolatory and didn't really listen to a lot of what the house guest said, I never got the angry black man from him, though a few people, especially Melissa, tried to paint that on him, and I didn't like that at all. Alrighty, so that concludes my coverage of the real world New Orleans. It's a solid season. Not one of my faves, especially of the first 9 seasons. And it'll be interesting to see if this ends up on the lower end, the middle end, or the higher end as I make it through the end of this list. I am looking forward to seeing Back to New York because obviously they're back in New York and this is the season of Mike and Coral. So seeing their beginnings is very interesting. Anyways, thank you for watching and I'll be back with more soon. Take care.